everyone, especially to our kind and approachable instructor here, Ma'am Ivy Jill Manelius. Have a wonderful day to you, ma'am. So today we're going to present our video presentation under macroeconomic type, which is the chapter 8, economic growth and economic development. When we say macroeconomics type, it means it deals all the aggregate or common behaviors of all individuals in the economy. This time, I'm going to mention the main subjects under macroeconomics that we're going to study. First is growth, second is unemployment, third is inflation, fourth is industrial production, and the last but not the least, which is the international trade. So under macroeconomics, economists do study the effect of government policy in this factor. Since our topic here is all about economic growth and economic development, then I'm going to tackle first about the national income. So national income, each financial year, government has to calculate this. This is the income held by a country in a given financial year. Or in other words, national income is an entire income from the economy. In this topic, we are going to use the GDP or the gross domestic product in determining the national income. Let me tell you what is GDP and what it is all about. GDP is the gross domestic product, which is a total measure of the flow of goods and services at the market value that has resulted from current formal product expenditure in a country during financial year, including the income from a GDP has four types of final goods and services. First, consumer goods and services to satisfy immediate needs and wants to the people within the country. Second, gross provide domestic investment in capital goods. This consists of fixed capital formation, residential construction, and inventories of final and intermediate goods. Third, goods and services provided by government. And the last one, net income from abroad, including exports minus imports of goods and services. And continuing about the gross domestic product or the GDP, there are also factors that should be taken into consideration regarding the concept of this. First, when measuring the goods and services for GDP during the year in terms of money at current prices. Second, when estimating the GDP of the economy, the market price of only final products should be taken into consideration. Third, goods and services provided free of charge should not be included in the calculation of GDP. Fourth, transactions which do not arise from the produce of current year should not be included in GDP. The fifth and the last, profits earned or losses incurred due to changes in capital assets as a result of fluctuations in the market prices are not included in GDP. There are also some things in GDP. So, there are three approaches in measuring the gross domestic product or the GDP. First is the income approach. So this method adds up all remunerations to the people as wages and salaries, rents, net interest, dividends, undistributed corporate profits, taxes, cost of depreciation, and net income earned from abroad. The second approach is the expenditure approach. Using this method, the GDP is calculated on the sum total of expenditure that has been incurred for goods and services in a country during 1 year. So it includes the following items. First, private consumption expenditure. Second, government expenditure in goods and services. Third, net foreign expenditure, value of export minus expenditure on imports. In this approach, we have a formula here. GDP equals C stands for consumption by households or private consumption expenditure, plus I stands for investment expenditure by the private sector, plus G stands for government expenditure in goods and services, plus the product value of exports minus expenditure on imports. The last of the three approaches is the value-added approach. So the money here, value of final goods and services produced at the current prices during the year is considered. This is done to avoid double counting. And now, let's proceed to economic growth. By the way, what is economic growth? So, this is the quantitative increase in the volume of goods and services in the economy. It is the positive change in the level of production of goods and services by a country over a certain period of time. It is often measured as a range of change in the gross domestic product or the GDP over time. There are two types of economic growth. First, it is the nominal growth. This nominal growth as an economic growth including inflation. It just looks in the given period's GDP figures without removing inflation. Next, the second type, which is the real growth. This is a nominal growth minus inflation. It presents the real picture of the economy during a stated period of time. It presents the actual performance of the economy without inflation. It is real GDP that presents a good picture of economic performance. There are also factors for economic growth. Just like when we are cooking, we need key ingredients or we need ingredients for a good taste in our meal. So, we have here the key ingredients for economic growth. First is the capital, second is the labor, and third is the productivity. There are also sources for economic growth. So these sources are known to be capital accumulation and utilization, technology, and labor productivity. Traditionally, these sources included land. Once ingredients are mixed very well and with good political leadership, the economy will achieve rapid economic growth. Economic growth is vital and so necessary or very needed for development. Ultimately, countries aim to achieve development in its varied multidimensionality, economic, political, and social. This time, we'll go deeper about growth. So, growth is achieved by improvement in productive capacity or increased productivity and use of relevant technology, access to the markets for the products produced by the country, enabling environment for doing business, including political stability and managing of population growth rates. So, to be able to reduce poverty in a country, it is necessary that GDP is increasing at sustained rapid level of growth. It should be persistent and not intermittent. Countries trying to boost economic growth need to rethink their population policies, just like China. They implement the rule one-child policy. Countries that have achieved high level of growth have also had their population control strategies. They reduce rate of population growth. Let's continue. So there are aspects that should improve during economic growth. There should be an improvement in the utilization of available resources like water resources, land, minerals, and forest. If economic growth is to be achieved, natural resources have to be exploited in such a manner that it benefits current and future generations. Well-managed activities on the utilization of natural resources, including fishing, farming, mining, and lumbering, will help benefit society today and in the future. To improve such land requires fertilizers and mulching where necessary. You can use irrigation and tractors to improve on labor productivity in the agricultural sector. There should be an increase in capital accumulation in the economy. Capital can be accumulated through increased savings by individuals, firms, and governments, and accumulation of foreign exchange through more export receipts. Another thing is a rise in the numbers of people becoming entrepreneurs, like pioneering innovations and inventions locally and increasing in the number of jobs in the economy. As already mentioned in this book, the reward of entrepreneurship is interest. So interest is earned from an investment, brands, buildings, rented land, and additional opinions about economic growth. Economists that are on path of economic growth necessarily have been seen to experience a reduction in the population growth rates. This reduction is due to family planning. Either people begin to value the quality of their families like health and education, or government puts in place strong population checking policies. And now, let's proceed to another lesson, and it is the determinants of economic performance. So, here we're going to talk about investment first. Investment is the most fundamental determinant of economic growth. Both foreign and domestic investment are vital. FDIs are vital in boosting capital injections and technology transfer in the economy and exports. Since the economic growth and economic development is under macroeconomics type, then we're going to talk it right now. Macroeconomic conditions are regarded as necessary but not sufficient conditions for economic growth. It's not sufficient. Generally, a stable macroeconomic environment may favor growth, mainly through reduction of uncertainty, whereas macroeconomic instability may have a negative impact on growth through its effects on productivity and investment. Now let us continue. Here is the second determinant for economic performance. It is the openness to trade. It is another determinant for economic growth. There is ample literature that has found out that economies that are more open to trade and capital flows have higher GDP per capita and grew faster. Openness is usually measured by the ratio of exports to GDP. There is another measure of openness which seems appropriate, and that has been proposed by Sachs and Warmer on 1995. According to this measure, an economy is considered to be quite open if it satisfies the following 5 criteria. First, average quota and licensing coverage of imports are less than 40%. Second, average tariff rates are below 40%. Third, the black market premium is less than 20%. Fourth, no extreme controls are imposed on exports. And the last one is, the country is not under a socialist regime. The third determinant for economic performance is the institutional framework. The role of institution in boosting economic performance have for a long time been acknowledged since 1955 by Lewis and Iris on 1962. There are 5 key institutions by Ruderick in 2000. First, property rights. Second, regulatory institutions. Third, institutions for macroeconomic stabilization. Fourth, institutions for social insurance. And the last one is institutions for conflict management. The mentioned keys exert direct influence on economic growth and also affect other determinants of growth such as the physical, human capital, investment, technical changes, and the economic growth processes. Next type of determinant for economic performance is the social capital, and the last one is the social. Again, let us move on to another lesson within our topic, and it is the economic growth versus economic transformation. Here is the characteristics of economic transformation. First, the structure of the economic changes depicting an increase in the share in manipulating coupled with a sustained decline in a share of agriculture. Second characteristics is the share of agriculture employment falls while the share of total labor force in other sectors of economy increases. And the last one is economic activity shifts from rural areas to the cities, leading to an increase in the degree of urbanization. And now we're going to compare the economic growth and economic transformation on how they can be effective. First, economic growth portion. First is, can't play without economic transformation. Second, employed citizens are necessary. Third, education can help economic growth. And let's move to the economic transformation portion. First, agricultural reform and expanded investment in rural infrastructure can provide the basis for economic transformation. Second, can't be effective without economic growth. Third, productivity-led agricultural growth is more important in this aspect. And the fourth and the last one is vocational and technical education is also necessary to have economic transformation. Another lesson again, and these are the theories and stages of economic growth. There are many stages. Stage 1, it is the traditional society which is based on pre-Newtonian attitude. In this economy dominated by subsistence agriculture. Second stage, precondition for takeoff by transitional stage. So this stage, society because of education reduces the degree of traditional ways of life and there is changes of attitude. The stage 3, takeoff, and this stage changes in the social, political, and institutional framework. The fourth stage, it is the drive to maturity. It means a long interval of sustained progress. And the last one is the stage 5, which is the high mass consumption. It is very high figures of GNP. Leading sectors shift toward durable consumers, goods and services, and more working population in offices or skilled factory jobs, and there is increased proportion of urban population. And now, I welcome my group mates who will share about their explanation and the other lesson within our topic.
So, as a continuation of the topic, let us proceed to the benefits of economic growth. So, as you notice, there are 8 benefits of economic growth that can be found in the motion. So, as a reporter, I did my best to comprehend everything and for you to be properly understood as well. So, before I proceed, let me tell you what is economic growth all about. So basically, economic growth means an increase in real GDP or the gross domestic product or in the value of national output, income, and expenditure will increase. The benefits of economic growth. First, the higher incomes. So when you say higher incomes, it is when economic growth enables consumers to consume more goods and services and enjoy better standards of living. Another one is the lower unemployment with higher output and positive growth. By this, the firms tend to employ more workers and creating more employment. Next one is the lower government borrowing. By this, economic growth creates higher tax revenues and there is less need to spend money on benefits such as unemployment benefits. Another one is the increase in life expectancy and better education as well. Of course, all of these benefits are good for all individuals if and only if the flow of the economic growth is We are done in the benefits of economic growth and it's time to move on to the next topic, which is the middle class. Now, we will find out some important details about middle class. Middle class is a description given to individuals who typically fall between the working class and the upper class within a socio-economic hierarchy. In short, they are those households with daily expenditures between $10 and $100 per person in purchasing. They prefer quality and produce few children because of their understanding of the economic of raising children and the managing a family. To be properly understood, the middle class promotes efficient and honest delivery of government services as well as forward-looking public investment. For example, education and infrastructure that benefits all society rather than only special interest. Are we clear? Now, prepare yourself because we will move on to the next topic. There are some costs that society faces during the process of economic growth. And these are: first, households have to forego current consumption in order to save and later invest. Second, more people have to forego leisure as growth requires hard work. And the last one is what people traditionally used to cherish, such as big families in Africa and Asia, begin to disappear. Try to imagine these three costs. These costs will lead into risk of higher inflation and higher interest rates. Imagine that. Environmental effects and inequalities of income and wealth. Are you familiar with the so-called HDI or the Human Development Index? If not, then I will let you know. To overcome the deficiencies of gross domestic product or the GDP as a measure of welfare, the United Nations has developed the Human Development Index or the HDI that combines data on life expectancy, years of schooling, and income per capita in order to give a broader measure of countries' development. There has emerged a recent school of thought that instead of using GDP as a measure of wealth, use the happiness rate. That is better to ask people how happy they feel. To be properly understood, the HDI gives an overall index of economic development. It is very important to be familiar with HDI or the Human Development Index for us to know how a country is doing. We are now on the next topic again, which is the economic development. Be aware that economic development refers to the qualitative and quantitative increase in the level of goods and services in a country during a given period of time. As a student, it is very important to know the importance on why you should study the economic development. This is worth it because we will have the opportunity to apply tools of economic analysis to the problems and challenges facing less developed countries and to begin to understand why some countries have been able to go through a process of economic and human development. Economic development is about more than economic growth. Economic continuous increase in production over a changing time path, and it improves the economic well-being and quality of life of a community by building local wealth, diversifying the economy, creating and retaining jobs, and building the local tax base. Do you have any idea regarding the underdevelopment and poverty in developing countries? So again, this topic is interesting and sometimes heartbreaking, knowing that there are lots of people out there who fail to eat 3 times a day. Anybody would know an underdeveloped country when he sees one. It is a country characterized by poverty, with beggars in the cities and villagers seeking out a bare substance in the rural areas. It usually has insufficient roads and railroads, insufficient government services, and poor communication. It has few hospitals and few instructions of higher learning. So, in overall understanding characteristics of underdeveloped countries, some of them are experiencing low per capita income. In going back again, 3 authors define poverty in different words but their thoughts are the same. Poverty is hunger, lack of shelter, being sick and not being able to see a doctor, not being able to go to school and not knowing how to read, not having a job, fear for the future, living one day at a time, losing a child to illness brought about by unclean water, powerlessness, and lack of representation and freedom. There is no single cause of poverty because it will strike during an unexpected crisis. The UN distinguishes between human poverty and income poverty. Human poverty is the denial of choices and opportunities, most basic to human development, reflected in a short life, lack of basic education, lack of material means exclusion, and a lack of freedom and dignity. While income poverty means having an insufficient money to spend basic needs and wants and typically considered as poor. There are 2 types of income poverty: absolute poverty and relative poverty. Absolute poverty is defined according to an absolute minimum standard, which is often called the poverty line. Absolute poverty, for example, is when household income is below a certain level, which makes it impossible for the person or family to meet basic needs of life, including food, shelter, safe drinking water, education, health care, and etc. Whereas relative poverty is basically a comparison of different level of income. Relative poverty, for example, is when households receive 50% less than average household income. So, they do have some money but still not enough money to afford anything above the basic needs. Relative poverty can also be permanent, meaning that certain families have absolutely no chance of enjoying the same standards of living as other people in the same society currently have access to. There are two main causes of poverty in sub-Saharan Africa, and they are internal causes of poverty and external causes of poverty. So this is the last part of our topic, and again, are you familiar with the so-called champagne glass effect model of global poverty? So the champagne glass effect is where you actually see and notice that they live like kings, mansions, private jets, every type of luxury. This is Rhea Mae Mendoza reporting.
And now, as making a conclusion with our reporting presentation regarding economic growth and economic development, I want to share these things to you as an overall understanding about our topic. In every country or even in ourselves, we are looking forward for self-development or improvement. And so, just like the political leaders in every country, including the citizens, are craving for growth and development in the economy for the goodness of the welfare and for the country. With those goals, we always need to find ways and seek techniques to reach what we aim. There will be no growth happen if we don't take actions. I remember one thing, the phrase that change the plan but never do the same with the goal. Maybe there are times that the decisions and plans that we set cannot be effective enough to catch out our goals. Then what we need to do is to make another decision, then try to reach that certain goal. Do it with strong determination whatever happens. Once the goal is reached, then it is the time that transformation and development happen, and it's just all like on economic growth and economic development. When the certain economy will grow, then that will be the time for progress. Another thing is, a particular economy will only have growth if businesses, taxes, and only money subjects are handled carefully, distributed well to its capable field, and well managed by every responsible individuals. Lastly, we need to be wiser, strive harder in order to grow to have development. Thank you for watching and listening on our discussion.